every day 500 to 700 Shaheds. The Russian Federation is preparing new massive attacks on Ukraine. They're not using Shaheds. New UAVs in Sunumi region have surprised everyone. Ukraine's only chance is to shoot down drones with other drones. I'll share all the details in a moment. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. I'm Victoria Panchenko, and here are the latest events. The enemy is preparing for an even more massive use of drones against Ukrainian cities. Such a shocking statement was made by Ivan Shevtsov, the head of the press service of the Steel Border Brigade. The serviceman emphasized that the enemy is not stopping, but rather gaining momentum.
We've been fighting for 4 years, and we see constant progress both on our side and on theirs. And to say that we've already reached some kind of peak is impossible, because we'll only be able to see that after some time. I can only say that the enemy's forces are building up. In particular, the use of unmanned aerial vehicles is increasing. We really do see an increase in the number of crews working specifically with drones on their side, as well as the number of drones themselves. In other words, the enemy is specifically ramping up their component related to unmanned aerial vehicles. I can't say how much this will continue to increase, but lately there has been quite a lot of information from operational sources that the enemy is ramping up the production of its strike-type drones, including Shaheds, and is planning to carry out more and more strikes on the territory of Ukraine.
Russia is planning to launch up to 500 Gerans per day by September. Ukraine is one step behind. This was reported by the commander of a Ukrainian Armed Forces Reconnaissance Unit, Denis Yaroslavsky. The serviceman emphasized that Ukraine urgently needs to modernize its own anti-drone systems, produce mini-missiles capable of intercepting high-speed Shaheds, and that this must be done by Ukrainian businesses with state support.
The Russians have put everything on a state-controlled track. Drones equipped with imitation devices, we use them as well. They serve as decoys. I won't say how this is done technologically. They act as decoys for air defense systems, and they fly alongside the same Gerans, creating false targets for our air defense systems. Yes, they use them, and they produce them in very large quantities. It's a fairly simple product. And as I mentioned, our intelligence indicates that by September, they will be producing up to 500 Gerans per day. Moreover, they are modernizing them. Let's emphasize this. They are modernizing them. They are making them with jet propulsion. They are increasing the warhead, so now it will go from 50 kilograms up to 80 kilograms. They will be able to reach different altitudes where they will fly at over 4 kilometers, which already makes it impossible to shoot them down with our regular air defense systems. I have spoken with many manufacturers of anti-Shahed drones. Right now, we are focusing on quadcopters that take off and on wings that shoot them down. But all of this will stop working once the Russians switch to jet propulsion. So we need to modernize all our capacities for producing specifically anti-drone missiles right now. That is, mini missiles, each costing no more than, say, $5,000 to $10,000 a piece, which will be able to shoot them down because jet propulsion can only be countered by jet propulsion. That's why we need to look one step ahead, not just at the present, because right now, like crazy, everyone has started producing anti-Shahed wings. It's become some kind of trend. Look one step ahead. In winter, all these wings and quadcopters won't work against the Shaheds anymore.
Mr. Denis, I wanted to clarify, you say that we need to modernize our Shaheds as quickly as possible in order to again attach jet propulsion to them, because that's the only way since the Russian Shaheds have jet propulsion. How much time could that take? Ideally, how much time do we need so that we can defend ourselves on an unequal footing against these occupier drones?
We are behind in terms of time. Make a note of that. We are behind in terms of time. Right now, the state needs to announce, call it a nationwide competition for all manufacturers of such equipment, allocate budgets, and make it clear to everyone who is currently making these homemade drones somewhere in garages, basements, or workshops. Give them funding and tell them, guys, there's enough of this pie for all of you as manufacturers. Work together now to come up with technologies that will allow us to produce Shaheds patent these technologies, because there's also a business element here. Every manufacturer who is now investing their own money wants to make some profit later on, in addition to defending the country. This is business, you understand? He's putting in his own money. That's why it's important to make it clear. For example, if you produce some kind of anti-Shahed drone, okay, you all have some share in these contracts, because first and foremost, it should be Ukrainian business that supports Ukraine, the state. We shouldn't be moving production plants to Germany, Lithuania, Latvia, or other alliance countries right now, but supporting it here, because this is our main treasure right now. Everyone is after this treasure. It's the same in the brigades as it is everywhere in business. As for the so-called military business now, everything is fragmented for us.
By the way, Russia is using a large number of decoy targets to overload Ukraine's air defense system. This was stated by Hennady Khazan, president of the All-Ukrainian Aviation Organization Association of Private Pilots and Aircraft Owners. Out of 700 UAVs in the air, probably only half are real Shaheds. It is these that carry munitions and can cause significant damage, the expert explains. He added that the term Shahed is often used for all UAVs, which is incorrect, as they can differ in function and purpose. Let me correct you a little.
Please do.
There were not 700 Shaheds in the air. There were 700 UAVs of various types in the air, of which most likely no more than half were Shaheds. This is the main mistake, which unfortunately is quite common now when any type of UAV involved in a raid on Ukraine is called Shahed. Thank God that's not the case. So, let's take a breath and draw some conclusions. Among the targets that were present, there were missiles, there were UAVs of various types, including...
Mr. Hennady, and here, since we're already talking about this, there's a very important clarification. Thank you for highlighting this point. Please explain to our viewers the specifics of using and shooting down different types of UAVs, such as the Shahed type and, for example, the Gerans type or their imitators.
Well, I'll be very careful here because I'm the kind of person who, by the way, has always drawn attention to the fog of war on television. That is, I explain to people the difference in what is happening in the airspace of Ukraine. The Russian Federation, typically uses so-called decoy targets, which they employ, and that's exactly what they intended for, in order to break through Ukraine's air defense system through what is known as system overload. When a large number of targets are flying, Mr. Yuri Inat, with all due respect, actually said that it's very difficult, very hard for our specialists to track such a huge number of targets, for example, on a tablet. They need to be verified. What kind of target is it? Is it a UAV carrying a payload, say 50 or 90 kilograms? Or is it a decoy target made of foam, a mass-dimensional mock-up that more or less shows up on the screen, and the air defense system has to spend time figuring out what it is, whether it poses a threat or not, whether to destroy it using various systems, or let it pass, and then our electronic warfare teams will take it down. This is an enormous task. I take my hat off and want to say a truly huge and heartfelt thank you to absolutely everyone involved in successfully destroying those dangerous UAVs, which, in addition to everything else, are known to carry ammunition or dedicated air defense forces, the brave air defense forces of Ukraine, and the Air Force my sincere apologies. That's it. So, to clarify for the viewers, there are UAVs whose main purpose is deception, and there are other UAVs that carry ammunition. And unfortunately, as we see in the video, if one of them even just fragmented the target, or if it directly strikes the target, well, there's an explosion. But I want to point out regarding the Russians, lately they have been identifying targets, and it's no longer a secret to anyone that they are selecting targets. Ordinary multi-story residential buildings are being hit, but the goal here is already terrorist in nature, psychologically destabilize everyone, in other words, the citizens of Ukraine, so that they,
To sow panic, yes.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Notably, in the recent attacks on the Sumy region, judging by the debris, they were not using Shaheds, but new UAVs. This was reported by Oleksiy Kliuyev, a volunteer from Dobrobat. According to him, these drones were very fast and the response time to them has decreased.
This is the location where 3 enemy drones struck yesterday and caused a lot of damage.
Yes, tell us more in detail about the consequences, what happened, when, how many, and so on.
Overall, yesterday was a day full of strikes in the city of Sumy. In total, there were 5 drone strikes. Specifically, this educational institution on the street was hit 3 times. The strikes were targeted, hitting 2 buildings. The first 2 strikes occurred about half an hour apart, and the third strike happened around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Fortunately, by that time, there was no one here. So no one was injured as a result of the third strike. However, as a result of the first 2 strikes, 6 people were injured here at the site. They were at their workplaces. They were in their offices and outside. It is known that an electrician was injured. He was hit by shrapnel. A female employee who was sitting by the window was also injured by shards of glass. Yesterday, a healthcare facility was also struck. A woman suffered a concussion. There was a fire, and the state emergency service extinguished it. So today we started restoration work conserving these damaged sites. The state emergency service is working today. Dobrobat volunteers have also arrived at the scene. We will be sealing up broken window frames and repairing the roof, since some of the structural elements have been damaged. So today there's a lot of work to do. In total, more than 200 windows have been shattered here. The facades and the interior finishes of the premises have also been damaged. And we urge everyone who is willing, everyone in Sumy who cares, to join in the work, because the scale of the damage is very significant. But I want to emphasize that these were not Shaheds. Judging by the scattered debris, these were entirely new and advanced drones, And I can confidently say from my own personal experience that they are incredibly fast, and the crucial response time to them has significantly decreased. Therefore, I also urge people not to ignore the air raid alerts and to stay in safe places, at the very least, away from windows and not on the upper floors.
In turn, Kostiantin Krivolap, an aviation expert, stated that UAVs need to be shot down. UAVs, and that civilians should be involved in protecting the skies.
Right now, there are pilots, there are planes. We need to provide them with the ability to communicate with air defense, to get an identify friend or foe system, to give the pilot a tablet on their knee so they can see where they are, to provide full targeting, to get THF target allocation, identification of their own targets, and the pilots of this light aircraft will gladly smash these Shaheds, because everything needed for this is available. There are small missiles, there are interceptor drones, there are radars. You just need to put it all together and start working with it. To put it all together, you need a few decisions, not decisions about certifying, authorizing, setting up some commissions, or issuing licenses. That's not what this is about. The point is that right now we need to act the same way the authorities entrusted the population with issuing weapons. They handed out weapons and the people took them and significantly stopped the enemy, because the enemy did not expect that. Now we need to do the same thing with the Shaheds, because starting from April of this year, the number of hits from Shaheds, specifically Shaheds, has almost doubled. That is, if previously our average number of hits was around 13%, after that it became 23 to 26%. And the residents of many cities and towns see this with their own eyes.
Anatoly Krapchinsky, an aviation expert, asserts that Ukraine must develop interception systems to effectively counter aerial threats. The increased use of Shaheds is a result of the enemy's effective tactics. According to the expert, interception systems make it possible to detect enemy targets early, since Shaheds are difficult to spot with conventional radar systems. The expert mentions positive steps, in particular the Netherlands' promise to purchase 100 radar systems. He notes that these systems must meet modern requirements for detecting low observable targets.
Why is the number of aerial targets increasing? Because the logic behind using the Shahed is proven, and the enemy is actively trying to increase the number of assets in the airspace. Our main goal should be to make the logic of using the Shahed ineffective. How can this be achieved? By creating various systems and the distributed interception principle, which will make any enemy actions, for example, impossible. Right now, we can see that they have found a weak spot and are actively starting to exploit it. The problem is that most weapons like the Shahed are elements that are barely detectable by conventional radar systems and moreover are not fast-moving targets. And even for some systems, for example, the Jeopard or the Shilka, it's not exactly, let's say, well, it's not what they were prepared for, let's put it that way. So basically, we're saying that this is the fourth year of the war for us. And it's the third year, or rather the second year of active use of Shaheds. And we're still saying that we don't have enough radar systems that would effectively assist our military. Because the main goal is that before you destroy something, you have to detect it. And the enemy is taking advantage of this. So once again, let's remember that we don't have enough sound detection, not enough visual detection, radar systems or passive radar, because these need to be implemented and expanded. There are positive developments as well. For example, the Netherlands has promised to purchase about 100 radar systems. But will these radar systems meet the new requirements? Because, for instance, we use some Israeli radar systems to detect Shaheds. But, that's a counter-battery radar. In other words, it's not designed to work against small aerial targets. So probably it should have taken more than a year for our state-owned concerns, the military, the defense industry, or a private company, to be actively involved in creating systems for detecting low observable targets. Because that's the first step in creating an effective countermeasure system. When we are truly able to effectively detect any aerial target in real time, accurately classify it, and then assign appropriate interception tasks, whether we intercept it with, for example, a dedicated interceptor drone or highly mobile fire team is rapidly deployed, or say a powerful gun-type weapon with an advanced automatic turret system is precisely used. That's already a significantly different and more complex matter altogether. But before we can start taking active measures, we need to detect them. And this is the main gap that currently exists and, in fact, works against us.
To effectively counter massive attacks by Russian Shaheds, Ukraine needs between 10 and 30,000 interceptor drones every month. This was reported by aviation expert Bohdan Dolintsev. He noted that up to 70% of enemy targets can already be destroyed by some models of interceptors, but the critical issue remains the number of systems and trained crews.
And that is why, of course, the search for alternative means of counteraction, such as interceptor drones, is in high demand. The data coming in regarding their effectiveness indicate that some models guarantee the destruction of up to 70% of enemy targets. That's it. But of course, the key issue is that a large number of these systems need to be supplied for Ukraine's needs. As of today, the minimum monthly requirement is from 10 to 30,000 of such drones. And there is also an acute need to train hundreds or perhaps even up to 1,000 appropriate crews who would be able to operate these systems.
Ukraine needs 10 to 30,000 interceptor drones per month. And this, well, by simple arithmetic, if you carefully calculate and recall the significant figure of 5,200 drones that Russia produced in June, that's 2 to 6 drones per just one enemy strike asset. That's the kind of arithmetic we're talking about. Am I understanding this correctly, Mr. Bohdan? So to destroy one Shahed, for example, it takes 2 to 6 of our interceptor drones.
Well, look, to destroy one Shahed, in reality, it usually takes 2, maybe even 3 of these interceptor drones. But there's another issue here. In order to intercept a Shahed, you need to have the required number of those drones positioned along the entire route it might take. And we understand that on one day, Shahed might fly over the Chernihiv region and on another day over the Sumy region. And we can't predict and deploy the necessary number of interceptors along the routes because the enemy adapts their flight paths. And in fact, the use of these systems will, of course, roughly correspond to the number of drones that Russia launches, that is from 5 to 10,000 drones per month. But in order to provide protection, that is, to saturate all regions and deploy the necessary crews and pilots across the entire territory of Ukraine much more, will actually be needed in the first months. That's why I say up to 30,000. This is in order to provide, so to speak, the necessary quantity for most routes, but after that, the need will, of course, decrease, though it will remain no lower than 10,000 per month, considering the number of systems Russia is using.
That's all the news for now. We look forward to your comments. Stay tuned for the main updates and don't forget to like the video. Wishing you peaceful skies above.